Oh, hello, hello. Welcome. I am live on YouTube. We are here. I think I have a little. I, I was running behind again. Not so much as I was yesterday, but I had my light is off over here, so it's a little bit darker on that sense. But hopefully, you can still see me. And today, I actually got a really good episode. I got a wonderful email from Eli asking this question, but I had an interesting morning that relates to this. So I'm going to be talking about learning how to edit and master audio and the journey in which I went on to figure out what I needed to figure out and what I'm still trying to figure out. All right. So thank you for watching. This is a course of VO's journey. This channel is all about helping the new and upcoming voiceover artists grow their business and sidestep all of the crazy landmines I seem to step on. So today is part one of this mini series that I'm going to be putting together, and it's all about talking to you on learning the ins and outs of editing with your DAW as a voiceover artist, as well as mastering, and also what journey I went on to figure it out. But I want to talk to you first, and as part one, this is kind of like an overview of what I'm going to be talking about. But I want to start off by giving you a funny sort of story from this morning. Big shout out to Big Jim for helping me this morning. We were not successful, but I appreciate him taking time out of his day to help me. So anyways, as you know, I had posted yesterday, the video was about going, starting working with Source Connect and IP DTL and so forth. So I started with these, and I wanted to, funny enough, I got contacted by a client this morning who said that they have a client who wants to work with me and they want to remote in and direct me live for a session. So I was like, great, this is a perfect opportunity to use some of my new equipment, right? But hey, Woody, no problem, man. So I was like, oh man, this is great. So I had not yet though used IP DTL because they didn't say they wanted to use Source Connect. Which I imagine they were just trying to maybe phone patch in and watch me, so to be able to direct. So IP DTL is fine. Now I can do that again if it, other places, right? Because we talked about you could use Google Voice, that's free. You could also use Skype. You could also use Zoom if you have Zoom. But anyways, I wanted to use the software I bought, right? So anyways, but so as I was, I got a hold of Big Jim this morning and asked him if he would help me. So he agreed, and I wanted to see if we could connect, and then he could hear me and I could hear him. So basically, when I have the UAD Universal Audio Apollo Twin MK2. That's my interface, and I can. So anyways, I hooked up with him. We went through the process, and he could hear me, but for the life of me, I could not hear him with my equipment on. So when I turned it off and I went through the internal speaker, I could hear him finally, and he could still hear me. With all of my stuff on, he could hear me, but I could not hear him, nor could I get a signal through my system, which of course leads me to believe that it's a routing problem, right? I've got to find a way. Now, unfortunately, even though I have this incredible interface, there's still so much about it that I don't know. So I spent with him, and thank you again, Big Jim, for this. I mean, we spent a couple hours, I mean, my whole morning basically trying to figure this out. I had like work coming in from different clients and everything, and and people were contacting me, and I'm like, no, I am going to figure this out. And I imagine some of you probably get the same sense or same feeling about when you're working with your DAW. You got to figure out how to edit it right. You got to figure out the settings, and you can't move forward until it works. And interestingly enough, I had work coming in. I've got jobs that are done. Plus, I'm going away this weekend. Oh, which by the way leads me to say I won't be on live tomorrow at 1 because I'll probably be on the road, and that I'm actually oddly, which was cool, but my college booked me to speak. They're not paying me, so I guess booked is wrong. But they asked me to speak to the student body for their whole theater department and faculty about voiceover. So that's pretty cool. Because we're rock stars. Anyways, I'll be doing that, and that's going to be fun, but I won't be here, so I won't have the live tomorrow. But to bring all this back again, I can't seem to route it through my system. And as much as I've learned, so I got an email from Eli, it was really awesome, and he asked about audio editing, and especially from a voiceover standpoint, because there are people out there who do a lot of videos on audio editing, especially on Adobe Audition, even on Audacity, Pro Tools. I mean, there's stuff out there. There's not as much on Pro Tools and Studio One as there is on Adobe Audition, as well as Audacity. But you have people like Mike Russell, who has done everything conceivable for Adobe Audition. However, Mike Russell does he does all kinds of things, radio imaging, a lot of things. So some of those things really don't apply necessarily to us, but I've learned so much from him. So, the first part of this series is really, before I start diving into different sections of audio editing, is just that, for me, over the past couple of years on my journey, I've learned editing, of my audio and mastering and all this kinds of stuff through trial and error, through videos on YouTube. I've purchased things, plugins. I've done everything I could do to just figure it out and muddle through. I've paid professionals to help me. I've worked with people like Tim Tippett, who's amazing, right? He's done awesome. But in the end, it's kind of all boils down to, you just plugging away and learning through, trial and error. So that's the big, overview. And because of this morning, this is why I wanted to even talk about it more. I spent a couple hours trying to get the software or the system to work, and I couldn't get it to work. I'm still unable to get it to work. So I'm very frustrated, but I had to cut myself off. I had to stop, pull myself back in, because I've got other work to do. So I literally just recorded a session just a few seconds ago before I came on live. That another client wants, some extra things. So I had to record it extra that I got to send, and I'm done with that. So I have to send that to them. Then I've got a couple other jobs that, are sitting there that I got this morning that I need to complete, that are pretty decently sized jobs. So it's already after my time. So I spent, all morning doing this and the worst is when it doesn't succeed, you get really, it's kind of irks you, but you got to step back and let it go. So to bring all that in again, I'm going to say that if you are having trouble with your DAW, if you're having trouble with all this stuff, I guess there's level of problems. So like on this particular problem, it's not that big of a problem, right? Because I can still do all of my work and everything. But if you're having a problem with your interface, with your DAW, with editing and mastering and stuff, it is very important that you figure that out. You have to tackle that before you do something else. Hey, Sabah. And, if it's not where it needs to be, you need to figure it out. Now, there is analysis paralysis. I'm sure you've heard of that, where we can analyze something so much that it becomes, paralyzing, where we don't do anything because we keep analyzing and we're not sure if it's working. So there is that. And that's where I think coaches can come in, people that you trust. I do recommend being careful about things like taking work and posting them in Facebook groups and things like that. And I'm going to tell you why. I mean, because I run a wonderful Facebook group and I trust, the people in my Facebook group. But here's the thing. I know from a fact, when you post things in groups and ask for feedback, you have to understand that, everybody's going to have their own level of competency. They're not being mean or anything by their responses. They just know what they know and they don't know what they don't know. So when you post things in groups too, looking for feedback, you got to be careful because you don't know, whether or not they're going to give you feedback that's important. I mean, that's actually accurate. Do you understand? So first off, you've got to be careful about where you're searching for information on your DAW, or like, when you say I've got a demo or I've work, can you listen to my audio? And you post that places. That's an issue, right? You got to be careful with that. And again, not because people are out maliciously to get you, but honestly, because people are not maybe qualified to give the accurate information that you need. And they're not dialed into what you're going through. And on top of that, let's be honest, Facebook audio sucks. So you post stuff on Facebook audio, people don't even see it. So all I'm trying to say to you is just be careful when you're posting work to get feedback. All right. So sure. I want to, and I'm going to answer questions here real quickly, but I want to give you kind of just a quick overview of how a chain is. Now, I know this is kind of, if you're new, this will be great. And if you've been around for a while, you understand this, but I think it's really important to, just go through really quickly. And I've taught, and I used to teach this as well to my students, when I was directing and teaching live theater and live sound. But the same applies for us. So it's the chain, and this is important to understand every aspect of how audio moves from when the moment it comes out of your mouth, okay, through your microphone, your XLR, into your interface, and then into your computer, which goes into your DAW. All of that is really important, and then everything you put in between, whether you have an analog device and then you have got an insert like the DBX 286S, okay, that's like another preamp, right, that you plug into, which then plugs into your interface, which then goes into your computer. All of these things, all right, that's like the chain of how the signal runs. And it's important for you to understand it, right, because whenever you have issues with your sound or whenever you have something going on, you have to take in consideration each aspect of this chain, all right, and use it to figure out whatever the problem is. So just as a starters, right, the signal, all right, we create it through the sound waves, all right, and the frequencies that come out of our mouth. That goes through the microphone. The microphone picks up that signal, all right, from a capsule inside that resonates, all right, picks that signal up, sends it through the XLR cable, which is this right here, right? Sends it through the XLR cable, okay, as an analog signal. That signal goes into an interface, okay? So we've got your mic, which can be a dynamic or condenser mic right now, and then I've got it plugged into an XLR cable, right, which goes into an interface. That interface can either be an analog interface or it can be a digital interface, okay? An analog interface, either way, your interfaces take that signal and they turn it into a digital signal. But they also have the capacity, if it's a digital interface, it has the capacity to do things that, like to process, to pre-process audio, okay, and then send it through. If it's an analog, like your Scarlett, your Scarlett Solo, and a lot of these other devices interfaces, they are analog, meaning that they don't pre-process any of your work, meaning that in order for you to get something pre-processed, you have to insert something. I know you've seen insert. Well, that's the same thing in live audio, right? Like you see a big mixing board. Most of them now, and everybody uses, are digital ones, but still people use a lot of analog ones, right? So you have to insert something like the DBX 286, which then if you insert that and you run your audio through there, what happens is that insert, it's another piece of hardware that you can add compression and you can add a gate and you can add, different things to it, a de-esser, you can take away frequencies and stuff, right? So in a digital interface, they allow you can do that within the system. So like you can pull that up on your computer and it's processed through the actual interface, as opposed to you having to insert hardware into your interface. So that's the difference between a digital and an analog interface. Nowadays, for us as voiceover artists, most people, at least if you're starting out and stuff, you're going to have an analog interface because digital ones are more expensive. Okay. Like the Apollo Twin MK2, which is what I have, but I love it, and I would recommend you moving up towards that one day when you can afford it. You don't need it to be successful, but it's a good thing for you to be able to afford. So again, that is in the chain, that you go into. So you have to consider that when the signal comes from your microphone through your cable, and then it plugs into your interface. Your interface takes that signal, and by the way, it's an amp. It's like it's a preamp, right? So basically, what it does is it takes that signal and it adds juice to it, for lack of a better term, right? It adds some power to it, and it boosts that signal, takes the signal, transforms it into a digital signal. All right. And it sends that into a recording device through your computer, which in this case, whatever your DAW is, or whatever your DAW is. Right. So now, if your interface, okay, it's funny, they started mowing the lawn outside my door. If your interface, like if your preamp is not as high quality as maybe some other ones, all right, or it's struggling, or let's say you're using a dynamic microphone and you have an issue with, because like this one eats up gain. Like you got to pop up the gain like nobody's business, right? And depending on what interface you have, you might only have 40 to 48 extra, levels, decibels of gain that you can add to it, which means you might need a cloud lifter. So you might be having a problem with you getting like, here's something. Like, let's say you have a dynamic microphone, all right? And a dynamic microphone is different. You don't use phantom power for a dynamic microphone. But because dynamic microphones, what they do is they don't pick up as much noise. So if you have a background noise and issue, dynamic microphone might be something good to explore. This is the RE20. All right. It's a staple radio broadcast dynamic microphone. And it goes for about $450, $500. Anyways, the other one is the Shure SM7B, I think. And that's a little cheaper, and that's a staple too. So many people use that. That was the one that was made famous by Michael Jackson in the Thriller. But anyways, the condenser microphones have a lot of gain. And because you've got to turn up the gain so much, it really, really works that preamp. And what I'm trying to make is it can be noisy. So like you can get feedback. Like when you're recording, it sounds just noisy. And what you inevitably do then is you inevitably add a gate, or you add other sound, like reducing things, because you think it's your environment that's the problem. But when in reality, it's your preamp working its butt off in order to add that much gain. You see what I mean? And no matter what you do, you can't. So then what happens is you add all these things and it works a little, but what then happens is you notice that your words are being cut off, right? They sound like they're behind a wall or something, like you talk and then it goes away. And that's because the gate you've put on, all right, the attack and release is not set properly. And what's happening is that it's attacking it's attacking the end of your word too quick. And your audio is getting all messed up because you're trying to fix a problem within the chain. And that's why it's so important to understand the chain and what each of them do. So at this point, what you should do if you're in that situation is you should get a cloud lifter. You should get, I just purchased this actually. Well, this is for a condenser microphone, but this is the, I don't know if you've guys heard of a FetHead. They're really cool. And it's just a male to female adapter for XLR. And this is, I don't know if you can see it you probably can't see that. But anyways, this is the FetHead Phantom, which I use for traveling for my condenser microphone, because it allows me to add some really clean audio with very little preamp, noise or extra. Like I don't have to boost the preamp so high to get some really good noise, so that I can actually not pick up as much of that room noise as well, which is really super nice. So there's multiple reasons, but in this particular case, you'd get the FetHead, the normal one, and using that would allow you to be able to, it passes through like an extra 27 dB or something like that. And that helps a lot. And then it helps quiet down all the extra junk. Okay. So that's something that I think is, again, knowledge that will help you. Now, we're not talking about the DAW yet or anything like that. We're just simply talking about the chain. So once that happens and you get all that into your interface, then that goes into your computer. All right. Then through your computer, all right, it records the digital signal of it onto your DAW. And from there, now it's digital. That's we can create the file and we can edit and do all sorts of things after you've recorded. So that's called post, right? As opposed to pre, which was what I was just talking about doing from a digital interface standpoint, or an insert like the DBX 286S. The problem with pre is once it's done, you can't undo it. So I mean, once it goes through the chain and into your computer, it's already done. You see what I mean? So some people like to do that. Some people don't like to do that. I personally do both. I use some pre-processing with my digital, with my interface when I'm doing commercial work or when I'm trying to do work where I have a specific voice that I use over and over again. When I do character work or when I do loud work, go back and forth type of work where it's very like dynamic, I don't use any settings. I do it all raw, just very, so that because, I'm all over the place and I need to control volume. I don't want it processed immediately. I don't want, compression to be added on. I want to do it all just completely raw so that I don't get any overloading or any clipping or anything like that. Do you know what I'm saying? So like and again, that goes back to me learning about the different things that are possible and what's happening because one way, like when I do it pre-processing, that's nice because once I do it, I'm done processing. Like it's set specific, and I've set it specifically for my voice and everything. So I basically record it and I hit a rack, a button that I've put together, a hotkey button that does a couple little things, and then I'm done, and I can submit that, and it's high quality professional work quickly, right? That's come after a lot of time and also a lot of gear. And I think that's some of the things you have to understand too about the gear that you buy. All right. You can get professional high quality gear or work with not that expensive gear. That is true. I think the difference is understanding what the extra gear and stuff brings you as well. As I know, like I said, the more expensive gear I get, it allows you to do more things, okay, beforehand, as opposed to all doing everything afterhand. All right. So anyways, I wanted to talk about all of that so you understand the chain and how that works. All right. And you have to understand that before you start to meddle with all the rest of the stuff, because 90% of the problems that go on is because of this section before it even gets to the computer. I mean, when it gets to the computer, the file is already there, right? It's all this stuff. So figuring out this stuff is super important. Okay. So let's go ahead and look over here on the comments. Woody, what's up, man? Sabah, cool. All right. Contem 8 Tech. Sorry. I don't know if I said that right. I actually have a question about this level. Unlike last time when I question had nothing to do with the topic. That's okay. Woody says, dialed into what you're going through. Agreed 1000%. Cheers. All right. Find out what is finding out. Okay. Talon, forgot what account I was on. DBX 286 are amazing for the money. I've ordered. Okay. So Nick says, is your mic into your Apollo, or do you use a cloud lifter plus Apollo? Turned up a bit too late. Okay. So, yeah, I do not actually, for these. No, because my Apollo has more than enough gain. However, I have been thinking about getting a FET head for this recently because I literally got the Phantom for travel purposes, and I went in and I was testing it yesterday and in my booth for my Phantoms for a condenser mic, the regular FET heads for the dynamic mic, which is here. Both of them just go in there. However, my dynamic mic eats up about 90% of the gain that my Apollo Twin has. So if I had a regular FET head to plug into this, that would help a lot. And it could actually quiet down some things and some issues that I have sometimes because it runs so hot still that it does pick up, it's louder than it should be. Even though it's a wonderful system, it takes up a lot of gain. So I don't currently use that, but I am definitely thinking about doing that. All right. I'm definitely probably going to get now. The only downside to these things, or at least this one was like $100. Okay. And I think this one is close to that. So they're worth it. I know, but 100, it's because they can be considered a preamp as well. Right. So that's a whole nother story, is the money, right? It's like money hogs. The stuff eats up money. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question, Nick. Yeah. So not right now, but I'm planning on getting one. All right. Cause I'm actually starting to do more audiobook narration from this space. and all my commercial work and character work from inside my booth. Let's see. Talon, what cloud lifter would you suggest as a reasonable price? Well, that's the thing. I was just talking about this being 100. They have those the other cloud lifters on Amazon. It's like that blue box. I'm not quite sure that's what the name is. I'm trying to I think it's what is it? I think it's actually called Cloud. I think it's called Cloud Lifter. Let's see. Well, no, see that one's over $100. So, they're not they're not cheap. They are not cheap. Actually the Fed head might be, it's from Triton Audio. The Fed head might be one of the better prices. Somebody might know. And if you have an option in the group, that is a decent price, you can go ahead. But I will say this, and this is something that I want to point out to you guys, and this is important. Yeah, the Fed heads. Yeah, that's true. The cloud lifter is more expensive. So the Fed head is probably the best price. But here's something I do want to say to you, and I've learned this the hard way. It is very important, especially, when we don't have money, to be very, conscious about what we're spending for our business. But I can tell you this, it is true that you can get a lot of great equipment for not a good price. But at the same time, you want to try to make sure that you are getting good equipment, because part of the problem can be the equipment you buy. Do you know what I'm saying? Part of it can be, the wiring is not, up to par. It's not as built as well as it should be. So there's some times where you're going to have to spring for things or save. Trust me, I know it's hard, because I do know that you can get around equipment issues with some less expensive options. And there's definitely those out there, and you can do great. But I find that, a lot of times, those are all just patches until you can afford the better equipment. So I know it's a big topic. Let's see. So the cloud lifter, would you say, okay, so my question is, when you record with your gain low and then run it through a compressor or normalize to a higher dB, does that make the quality worse? Yes. So you have to think that if you record something, all right, low, with a lower volume, and then you're going to raise the volume up really high. And I see this often because I do audio editing for people as well as part of my business. And some people record really low, like -18 is like their peaks. And what happens is when they go to raise it, because they think by recording it low, it helps them not pick up anything. But what it does is when you go ahead and you raise the volume that loud, all right, it begins to get this, like, you overload the frequencies, so it's like every frequency, it doesn't matter what it is being raised really high, and it sounds just really distorted. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right at all. So you want to try to record within -12 to -6 dB. That should be your set. Okay. Good question. Is there any difference in the XLR cord from the mic to the audio interface? I have an Amazon Basic. Would the cable quality make a difference in the sound quality? Yes, it can. Absolutely. However, I would like to say that, a lot of times the cord quality also has to do with resiliency, like what is the traffic? Like, are people walking on it? Are you undoing it and putting it together? You know what I mean? Like, how much is it going to be used, like beat up? So that also, that goes into these things too. And usually in our type studios, we don't have that issue, right? So that's something to think about. So in the particular cases, you should be fine with that. You know what I mean? That should not be a big issue, but it's not a bad thing to upgrade when it comes to the stability of the pieces of it. Like, for example, Mike, these things, these are Amazon, like these things will come off. All right. And then the problem you start getting is if wires in there start fraying or something starts happening, that can cause issues. All those things can cause issues with your sound. So, having good cords, they're definitely important. All right. So Woody, friends, 85. Yep. Thank you, Woody, again. Thank you both for answering my, no, they're not. They're great questions, Sabah. I have a dynamic mic and love it. So it's worth the cloud lifter. If you find that, like, I don't know what dynamic mic you have, but again, like we were talking about, when you have a dynamic mic and especially when they eat up a lot of gain, what happens is that the preamp, in order to send all of that power out there, okay, they can be noisy. So you pick up extra noise through your recording. And what that and that noise is like staticky, or it's just it's a noise and you can't stop it, and it degrades your sound quality. So what cloud lifters do is they pass on more signal, okay, through the actual connection, so that you don't have to boost your gain so much, and in turn your preamp doesn't work as hard, it's not as loud, and you're not having those issues of picking up all that extra noise and all that junk, those bad frequencies you don't want to pick up. Okay. So yeah, cloud lifters are pretty good if you find you're having an issue with it. Okay. You might not. Okay. So I would think that shielding on the cable would be important. Yeah, absolutely. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Boy, this was a good one. I really appreciate it. I hope that helped out. Please like, share, follow. So I always say follow, subscribe, and also tick that notification button. All right, you guys, you have a wonderful day. I won't be here tomorrow again, like I said, because I'm going to be out of town. So I will see you guys next week. All right, you have a good weekend. Take it easy. Bye bye.